Hello, I'm Daniel McConville from the Census Office in the Northern Ireland Statistics Research Agency, NISRA.
I'm Maria Yassin. I'm a statistician at the CSO Census Division.
Together we will present some of the key statistics and highlights from today's release, Ireland and Northern Ireland, a joint census publication 2021-2022. This release is a product of a collaboration between the Central Statistics Office and the Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency. It brings together in a single publication the results from the most recent censuses held in Ireland and Northern Ireland. It is the second time we have produced such a release and follows on from the previous version we published after the last set of censuses, which were held close together in 2011. In this release, we combine the results from the 2021 census in Northern Ireland and the 2022 census in Ireland.
The publication includes a wide range of population and housing statistics, which allows for comparison of trends, similarities and differences, and which combines to offer a picture of the whole island of Ireland. The publication includes 6 chapters, which can be seen on the slide. It analyzes key topics such as demographics, marital status, households, ethnicity, place of birth, language, religion, health, carers, the labour market, cross-border workers, and housing. Daniel will introduce the initial 3 topics, and I will present the final 3.
Chapter 1 focuses on the population in Ireland and Northern Ireland and how it has changed over time, giving breakdowns by age and sex. In this chapter, data are taken from the census population in Ireland and uses both census data and mid-year estimate data for Northern Ireland. In 2022, the population on the island of Ireland reached 7.1 million. This was the first time the census had counted a population above 7 million people since 1851. This population of 7.1 million was made up of 5.15 million people from Ireland and 1.91 million people from Northern Ireland. This equates to 73% of the people on the island living in Ireland and 27% in Northern Ireland. Considering the sex breakdown of this population, it can be seen that almost half are male and half female, with 50.6% female and 49.4% male. Having said that, there are 90,000 more females than males in total, which means that for every 100 females in the population, there are 97.5 males. There's also a slightly higher ratio in Ireland with 97.7 males to every 100 females, while in Northern Ireland it is 96.8 males to every 100 females. Looking then at how the population has changed over time, the chart here presents population data from 1946 to 2022. Ireland is shown in blue and Northern Ireland in green. The same colouring will be used throughout all the charts you will see in this presentation. We can see in the chart here there has been little change between 1946 and 1961. You can also see that there has been a period of continuous growth since 1961, and this growth has been strongest in the last 20 years. In the data published today, we can see that between 2002 and 2022, the population on the island grew by almost 1.5 million people, by just over 1/4 or 26%. This growth, however, was not equal in Ireland and Northern Ireland. The Ireland population grew by 31%, almost 1.25 million people, while in Northern Ireland the population grew by 13%, almost 1/4 of a million people. Looking next at the age of the population, the median age, the age at which half of the population is older and half younger. In 2022, the median age was 38 in Ireland and 40 in Northern Ireland, indicating that the population of Northern Ireland was slightly older. This median age has increased markedly over the past 50 years, increasing from 27 in Ireland and 28 in Northern Ireland in 1971 to the 38 and 40 we see here in 2022. This increase is in line with what has been seen elsewhere, with the median age in the UK at 41 and the median age in the EU at 44. The data published with this report allows the reader to see that the female median age is higher than the male median age in both Ireland and Northern Ireland. Also contained within the release is information on the population density. While the average number of persons per square kilometre on the island is 84, there is significant variation between Ireland with 73 persons per square kilometre and Northern Ireland with 141 persons per square kilometre. Moving on to Chapter 2. This chapter examines the population by marital and civil partnership status, household composition and household size. We'll first look at the marital and civil partnership status. The data from the census are shown in the figure, again with Ireland in blue and Northern Ireland in green. We can see that the largest group here are those who were married. When added to those who were separated but still legally married, they sum to just under half of the population in both Ireland and Northern Ireland at 49%. The next largest group are those who were single, with 43% in Ireland and 39% in Northern Ireland. Also of note, we can see the proportion of persons who were divorced in Northern Ireland stood at 6%, which was double the 3% reported in Ireland. The analysis contained in the report also extends to the living arrangements or household composition across Ireland and Northern Ireland. High-level comparisons are shown in the figures on screen. It can be seen that the most common living arrangement in Ireland were those living in households consisting of couples with children. Over 1/3 of households in Ireland reported this configuration, compared with 28% in Northern Ireland. In Northern Ireland, one-person households were the most common, at 31%, compared to 23% in Ireland. Of the one-person households, similar proportions were reported for households with one pensioner living alone, 10% in Ireland and 12% in Northern Ireland. Another group of note were one-parent households. While these accounted for 10% of households in Ireland, represented a larger share in Northern Ireland, where the proportion was 14%. Finally, in Chapter 2, household size and how it has changed over the last 20 years is also included in today's release. From this data, it can be seen that the proportion of smaller households with one or two persons has increased, seen here in blue, while the proportion of larger households with 5 or more people has decreased, seen here in yellow. The result of recent increases is that in Ireland in 2022, more than half of households contained 1 or 2 people, while in Northern Ireland in 2021, this proportion is higher at 61%. Conversely, the proportions of large households with 5 or more persons have decreased to 13% in Ireland and 9% in Northern Ireland. The smaller household sizes seen in Northern Ireland follow on from the larger number of households seen to be single-person households. The next chapter, Chapter 3, looks at ethnicity, place of birth, language and religion. We'll first look at ethnicity. The questions asked in the 2 censuses offered respondents slightly different ways to identify their ethnic group. To compare the results from the questions across the island, the census responses have been collapsed into 5 broad categories, based on how people self-reported. The largest of these categories, white, represents the majority of the population in both Ireland and Northern Ireland, at 86% and 97%. The second largest group seen both in Ireland and Northern Ireland is the Asian ethnic group, which was 3.7% of the population in Ireland and 1.7% of Northern Ireland. Within the other categories, we can see that 1.5% of the population in Ireland and 0.6% in Northern Ireland reported a black ethnic group, and Irish travellers made up 0.6% of the population in Ireland and 0.1% in Northern Ireland. Place of birth or country of birth was also collected in both censuses. The majority of residents in Ireland and Northern Ireland were born there. However, significant proportions were born outside the jurisdictions. In Ireland, 20% reported that they were born outside of Ireland, with 1% born in Northern Ireland and 4% born in Great Britain, England, Scotland or Wales. This proportion was smaller in Northern Ireland, where 13% reported they were born outside Northern Ireland, 2% born in Ireland and 5% in Great Britain. Of those who were born outside the jurisdiction, Poland was the most frequently reported country in both Ireland and Northern Ireland, with India and Romania next in Ireland, and Lithuania and India next in Northern Ireland. The use of language other than English or Irish is also included in this report. There were some differences in how the language questions were asked in both censuses. Of the population aged 3 or more, 15% in Ireland and 4% in Northern Ireland reported their main language was not English or Irish. The age distribution of these people is shown in the figure, where we can see that in both Northern Ireland and Ireland, the highest and most common age group was 35 to 44. The most common language reported in both Ireland and Northern Ireland was Polish, followed by Romanian and French in Ireland and Lithuanian and Romanian in Northern Ireland. The final theme in this chapter is current religion. Here, it can be seen that the largest religious group in both Ireland and Northern Ireland was the Roman Catholic group, at 69% in Ireland and 42% in Northern Ireland. The next most common religious group was the Protestant and other Christian category, which represented 37% of the population in Northern Ireland and 7% of the population in Ireland. The number of individuals reporting no religion is a significant proportion of the population, with 15% in Ireland and 17% in Northern Ireland. How this varied across the island is also included in the release. We can see that in Ireland the proportion of people with no religion ranged from 7% in Monaghan to 24% in Dunlea or Rathdown, and in Northern Ireland it ranged from 8% in Mid-Ulster to 31% in Ards and North Down. Thank you for listening, and I will now hand over to Maria to present chapters 4 through 6.
Thank you, Daniel. I will start with the findings from Chapter 4, focusing on health and carers. It is important to note that the COVID-19 pandemic may have had an impact on the results. The question on general health asked people to rate their health from very good to very bad. In Ireland, 83% of people reported their health as good or very good, compared with 79% in Northern Ireland. 1 in 7 or 14% of people in Northern Ireland reported fair general health, compared with 9% of people in Ireland. There was a higher proportion of people reporting their general health as either bad or very bad in Northern Ireland at 8% compared with 2% in Ireland. General health declined with age in both Ireland and Northern Ireland, with more people reporting fair, bad, or very bad health as they got older. People aged 85 years and over had the worst health. In this age cohort, 9% in Ireland and 25% in Northern Ireland reported bad or very bad health. While the proportion of people reporting bad or very bad health increased with age in both Ireland and Northern Ireland, the proportions increased at a greater rate in Northern Ireland. In both Ireland and Northern Ireland censuses, people were asked if they provided regular unpaid help or support to a family member, neighbor, or friend with long-term illness, health issue, or an issue related to old age or disability. The proportion of carers in the population is displayed in Figure 4.3. At 12%, the proportion of total population aged 5 years and over providing regular unpaid care was higher in Northern Ireland compared with 6% in Ireland. A greater proportion of females provided unpaid care compared with males. In Ireland, 7% of females and 5% of males regularly provided unpaid help. In Northern Ireland, 14% of females were unpaid carers compared with 11% of males. Chapter 5 looks at the labour force, employment sector, and education. The different years of the censuses in Ireland and Northern Ireland should be taken into consideration when reviewing this chapter, due to the different employment practices that may have been in place during the COVID-19 pandemic. Labour force is a term used to describe people at work or unemployed. In Northern Ireland, labour force data relates to economically active people aged 16 years and over. Different methodologies were used to collect labour data in Ireland and Northern Ireland. To make meaningful comparisons, the census data on unemployment in Ireland was adjusted using unemployment rates from the Labour Force Survey. Using this adjusted approach, it can be seen that there were almost 2.5 million people aged 16 and over in the labour force in Ireland in Census 2022, and over 891,000 people in the labour force in Northern Ireland in Census 2021. The Adapted International Labour Organization unemployment rate was 4.6% in Ireland and 4.7% in Northern Ireland. Map 5.1 shows the unemployment rates for the people aged 16 and over by administrative area. Areas with the higher rates of unemployment have darker shades of red. The area with the highest unemployment rate in Ireland was Louth County Council at 6.5%, and in Northern Ireland it was Derry City and Strabane at 6.8%. At the other end of the scale was Galway County Council at 3.1% in Ireland and Mid-Ulster District at 3.5% in Northern Ireland. The industries with the largest numbers of workers were human health and social work activities and wholesale and retail trade, both at 16% in Northern Ireland and 12% in Ireland. Northern Ireland had a higher proportion of people working in construction at 8% compared with Ireland at 6%. Ireland had a larger share of people working in information and communication at 5% compared with Northern Ireland at 3%. A detailed breakdown of the industrial sector can be seen in Figure 5.2. Figure 5.3 compares the main modes of transport of usual residents aged 16 years and over travelling to work in Northern Ireland and Ireland. Car or van was the main mode of transport for the majority of workers in both Ireland and Northern Ireland. There was a higher proportion of people who worked mainly at or from home in Northern Ireland than in Ireland. Figure 5.4 shows the main modes of transport for children and students aged 5 years and over in full-time education. Most full-time students travelled by car or van. Children and students travelling to school or college were more likely to commute by bus in Northern Ireland than in Ireland, and less likely to commute by bicycle. Both censuses asked questions about place of work, and the maps in this section show where in Ireland and Northern Ireland cross-border workers travel to. There were 7,777 people travelling to work from Ireland to Northern Ireland, and 10,541 people travelling to work in the opposite direction. The top 3 local government districts in Northern Ireland that workers from Ireland were travelling to were Derry City and Strabane, Fermanagh and Omagh, and Newry, Mourne and Down. The top 3 counties in Ireland where cross-border workers were travelling to were Dublin City, Louth and Donegal. Moving on to education, in Ireland, just under 1/4 of people aged 16 and over reported that a basic qualification was their highest level of education. In Northern Ireland, this proportion was higher at 30%. A greater proportion of people in Ireland held intermediate and advanced qualifications at 37%, compared with 30% in Northern Ireland. Higher and professional qualifications were equally common in both countries at 32%. We will now look at the housing data. Figure 6.1 shows the proportion of permanent properties that were either occupied or unoccupied at the time of the census. There were more than 2.1 million permanent housing units in Ireland in 2022, of which 89% were occupied and 11% were unoccupied. In Northern Ireland, there were almost 820,000 permanent housing units, of which 94% were occupied and 6% were unoccupied. Figure 6.2 shows the breakdown of the accommodation type for occupied private households. Overall in Ireland, 87% were houses, slightly lower than the equivalent figure of 90% for Northern Ireland. A higher proportion of occupied properties in Ireland, 13%, were flats or apartments, than in Northern Ireland, 10%. Detached houses made up 41% of occupied households in Ireland and 38% in Northern Ireland. Semi-detached houses were the second most common type of households, making up 30% of homes in Northern Ireland and 25% in Ireland. Temporary households such as caravans and mobile homes accounted for 0.2% of homes in Ireland and 0.1% in Northern Ireland. I will now finish up with the infographic for our publication. You can find this along with other infographics available at CSO.ie. Detailed visualizations, text, graphs, and maps including administrative area breakdowns are available in this publication and provide further information on each topic. So be sure to log on to CSO.ie or NISRA.gov.uk to explore the data. Any queries you may have can be emailed to census@cso.ie or census@nisra.gov.uk. Thank you for your time today.